Hey, what's up, everybody? How's everybody doing tonight? And I'm getting a little bit of feedback, so let me see where that's coming from real quick, and then I will say hello to you folks. Hey, what's up, everybody? How's everybody doing tonight? Yep. And I'm getting a little bit of feedback, so let me see where that's coming from. Where is that coming from? And then I will say hello to you folks. Hey, what's up, everybody? How's everybody doing tonight? Yep. I'm getting a little bit of feedback, so let me see where that's coming from. And David's down in the green room. Do you have your YouTube muted, David? Where is that coming from? And David's down in the green room. Do you have your YouTube muted, David? All right, give me a second, folks. Let me try to find where this is coming from. Where is that coming? And David's down in the green room. Do you have your YouTube muted, David? All right, give me a second, folks. Let me try to find where this is coming from. Gotta love live streams. All right, that's muted. Gotta love live streams. What am I missing here? All right, that's muted. Gotta love live streams. What am I missing here? Gotta love live streams. What am I missing here? All right. I'm checking, Harvey. All right. All right, David, I'm going to bring you up just to see. Yes, it's mocking me. Have a great day. All right. Now you talk. Let me see if I get any echo. All right, David,
testing 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15. It is a beautiful evening, though we are expecting a freeze within a week, which is absolutely bad for survival gardening, and we're probably going to die.
And you have your YouTube muted, right?
Yeah, there's no YouTube on here.
All right. Why am I getting this feedback?
There's a loop coming through.
Yeah.
It sounds like. Should we eject and restart the streaming?
I'm going to close out all my windows that might be open here just to see. I can. I'm going to close out all my windows that might be open here just to see. All right, that's muted. All right, we still getting this back here now? Are we good now? All right, that's muted. No, I'm still hearing myself. All right, we still getting this back here now? All right, let me try this. Are we good now? All right, testing 1 2 3. No, I'm still hearing myself. All right, we still getting this back here now? Where am I getting this? Let me try this. Are we good now? All right, testing 1 2 3. No, I'm still hearing myself.
Shouldn't be anything coming through from my end. I can't hear you. So your microphone is muted, but
all right.
I can't hear you.
You have a YouTube window open somewhere. I'm looking, folks. So hold on. You might be right. Nope, that's my two streams. That's my stream window. You have a YouTube window open somewhere. What in the heck? I've never had this issue. Usually I'm doing pretty good. Hold on. You might be right. Nope, that's my two streams. That's my stream window.
I can leave the studio if that helps, and you can isolate it to your channel.
All right. How about now? I've closed every window but StreamYard now.
If that helps, and you can isolate it to your channel.
All right, how about now? I've closed every window but StreamYard now. I can't even see chat.
Do you have a secondary microphone running?
I should not. Good question. Let me check that here in audio. Echo cancellation, microphone.
Secondary microphone running?
Nope. I should not. Good question. Let me check that here in audio. Echo cancellation.
It's sending it through twice.
Nope. All right. So I'm gonna do something weird. You're gonna be by yourself, David.
No problem. It's sending it through twice.
All right. Let me see. All right. Testing 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3. 1 2 3
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us. This is the perils of live. Once it gets fixed, though, it's going to be amazing. And I'm very happy to be here. If he keeps me in here too long, I'll start talking
All right,
about
so this is going to be weird. Well, I know because I can't even hear you this way.
If he keeps me in here too long, I'll start talking
All right, so this is going to be weird. Well, I know because I can't even hear you this way.
It's coming back around from your side, it sounds like. Literally, I have.
All right, you stay here. I'll be right back. I'm going to close out my entire system, but you'll still be live.
Sounds good. Well, everybody, since I am still alive here, I am actually going to find the stream and see what you all are talking about. Sorry that we're having a little bit of issues here. If you don't know who I am David the Good. I am a garden writer, survival gardener. I grew up in Florida, and so I have a lot of experience in zone 10/11, which is sort of pretty much subtropical to tropical. Spent 5 years in the tropics, and I spent over 5 years in North Florida and did a lot of gardening in zone 8/9. I currently live on the border of Florida and Alabama, zone 8 solidly, but I've also gardened in zone 6 and 7 because I spent about 6 years in Tennessee. So that's my gardening education. So for those of you in zone 5 and north, I am very, very sorry. I don't have anything to say to you. Not really. I do have experience from books, but there's nothing like actually doing the the honest to goodness gardening on the ground. There's head knowledge and then there's practical knowledge. So when you ask somebody, if you're a gardener and you ask somebody, hey, tell me, how do I do such and such? Make sure the gardener that you're actually talking to knows your climate, your soil, and your conditions, because there's going to be a lot. I've got a big bunch of gardening books all alongside here. These gardening books range from climates such as Fiji. I've got agroforestry guides for Pacific Islands. I have got gardening knowledge out of New York and California and Maine and all of these different climates, and then plenty from Florida. But if I was to ask, Elliot Coleman of year-round gardening, if I said, hey, can you tell me how to grow potatoes? But I was living in Atlanta, Georgia, he would have general ideas on how to grow potatoes, and he would tell me exactly how it grows potatoes and how it does well for him, but it may not do the same in your climate. Even reading the back of a seed packet, and it says plant after all danger of frost in your area. Sometimes you have a climate like in Arizona where it goes from being cold, freezing, and then it swings up into hot weather, where you'd better not plant it that late. You probably better plant it before your last frost date. So anyhow, I want to say good evening to you guys. I see we have 105 people watching. Annie says, wait, what? I'm in zone 5. So, hey, Jan, Belle, Jesus, Karen, I see some of my folks here. Good evening. There's no Baphemus emoji here. That's on my channel. Sorry, Scott. Scott Head is here. Snakebite. And JT. Have a great day. Harvey Black. Scotty. Oki Khan. Frank. Matrix Transparency. Matrix Transparency, man. I just watched The Matrix with my oldest children the other night so they could see what it was like growing up in the 90s. Beautiful. Except for the agents. Empress Kimberly. Mitten Prepper Veteran. All right, Yarn Pepper. Voodoo Queen. My YouTube channel is David the Good, the survival gardening channel with David the Good. It's really, really long, so when I respond to somebody as the survival gardening channel with David the Good, they know that I responded, and they have to find what I actually said because my channel name is so long. Sheila said, grew up some in Fort Lauderdale. Parents still live there. Yep, mine too. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale. Love growing there all winter. That's right. I mean, it's wonderful. Now, the downside of it is that the entire south portion of Florida is all city. It's like one big long strip of city, which is very difficult. Very, very difficult. So, Savage Prepper says, you look like a man who knows a thing or two about potatoes. I think I may look slightly like a potato. So thank you for that. It's one of my favorite things to grow. However, you know, you'll hear that, right? Potatoes, #1 survival crop. Potatoes. Get your calories in the ground. Potatoes will outproduce. Potatoes will outproduce just about anything, ranging from grains to roots to leaf vegetables. Get your potato supplements in the ground now. Right. So potatoes are super preparedness fruit. However, I tried growing potatoes when I was down in the tropics, and I did not have luck. Hey, here's our guest, Gray. Welcome.
All right.
Hey, buddy.
Man, you are awesome, David. I'm telling you, most guests would be like, they'd just be like that deer in headlights. Like, okay, what do I do? But I had to reboot my entire system. I don't know, something was weird.
I'm so sorry. I don't hear that that loopy feedback thing coming anymore. So,
should we start over then?
Yeah, go ahead. I was just talking about potatoes. So,
no, that's awesome. And all right, folks, I do apologize for the inconvenience. Luckily, David took the helm, which is awesome. Real quick, I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here. Truly appreciate that. Hit that thumbs up. And I'll take it back to my guest. You can pick up where you left off, brother.
So I was saying, you know, depending on your climate, you'll get, if you follow somebody, YouTube or in a book or you know, even like my great grandfather, he was a great gardener. He was in upstate New York. And I visited him and I saw his garden when I was little. And he said, David, you want a garden too? I was like, oh, yeah, I want a garden like this, Grandpa. And he goes, all right, take some of this lime and take some of these beet seeds. And you just go and you plant them down there and put a little lime on the ground and put those beet seeds in the ground and grow them. Well, I tried to garden like my great grandpa and I had terrible luck. I basically just killed everything. But down in South Florida, it's beach sand. It's warm year round. Goes back and forth between being dry and a little bit cool, but not cold, never freezing. And, you know, planting beets in summer, forget it. They did great for him in upstate New York, but that was, you know, it didn't work. But my grandpa was a fantastic gardener. So if you follow somebody, you know, I like Charles Dowding, his no-till gardens, man. Those no-till amazing gardens in England. I want to do that. But you follow that, and maybe you live in Mississippi, and you find out that when you put a bunch of mulch chips on the ground, you end up with the most incredible infestations of insects like you never seen, because the pests never die in the South. Never, you know, or you find out that the timing is not the same. Yeah, your Prepper says, I follow M.I. Gardner for Zone 5. That's exactly the right thing to do. Try to figure out who's in your area. Try to figure out, you know, you can actually get better information from the old guy or the old lady down the street. You see somebody with a good garden in your neighborhood, go down there and say, hey, how do you do that? Don't go down there and say, haven't you ever heard of no-till? There's this guy on YouTube. You know, don't do that to them. Just ask them and figure out, because they probably know more about your area than somebody who is an absolute expert at a particular technique, which may not actually be in your area. So it's always important to try and look. Yeah, Scott Head. Scott Head is Zone 9A, Texas. If you're not following Scott Head's gardening channel, it is an excellent gardening channel, particularly if you're a new gardener and you're trying to get stuff done in the South. Man, it's a great channel. But if you were following, you know, I have followers that are writing me and saying, man, it's really nice to see your garden. We're under 2 feet of snow right now. And it's like, I don't even know what to tell you. I mean, if I can't, you know, there's a lot that I can suggest on a general basis. But what I actually try to do is, instead of giving people techniques, I will give you techniques. But what I try to do is get people to think differently. I actually went to art school when I was younger. I didn't know what to study in college, so I studied art. It came first in the prospectus, you know. It's like, hey, art, that's A's. I'll start with the A's. I'll just do art. That's cool. So I studied art, and this art teacher said, I'm not going to teach you how to draw. I'm going to teach you how to see. Huh. I don't know what you mean by that. He's like, okay, everybody go outside with your sketchbook and go draw something. Come back in an hour. So he's not going to tell us what to do? Okay. So we just go outside and start drawing stuff around campus. I draw the side of this building. There's building 5 over there and some landscaping, and another girl with a sketchbook over there trying to draw building 5. So I draw this little picture, and I bring it back, and I said, oh, here's my drawing. I thought I did a pretty good job. And he goes, is there a line around the edge of building 5? And I said, well, that's the building. And he says, no, but if you look at a building, do you see a line? Do you see a black line around the edge of a building? I was like, no, I guess not. I always just thought of it as the edge. How are you going to draw a building on a line? He says, well, it's a plane of shadow, isn't it? Oh, you're right. I never saw that before. Oh, now I see what you're saying. So he's like, you got to learn how to see. So to learn how to garden, you're actually learning how to think. What do the plants want? How do they act? How do they respond? You've got to lose your fear of doing it wrong and just actually do it and start to get the experimental processes in place. If you want to grow tomatoes, plant 10 different varieties of tomatoes the first year. Oh, whichever one does great for you is obviously better adapted to your area. You just taught yourself how to grow tomatoes in your area, and now you probably are better at growing tomatoes than the people down the road that keep planting the same variety that they get from the local feed store. Now you have tested 10 tomatoes. If somebody says, what's the best way to grow potatoes? Well, I don't exactly know what your yard is like. I can give you some ideas on how potatoes grow. What you need to do is throw mulch on top of some of them, dig a trench for some other ones, till deeply with some, do some no-till, put some in containers, try different methods. Just because you saw it on Pinterest and it looks like that person got a huge pile of potatoes, it could be an abysmal failure in your backyard. You have to actually kind of think and play and not be scared of it. So when it's time to garden seriously, you're not scared of it. Kind of resetting your brain a little bit.
It's I was thinking, because your zone that you're in now, is it differ from where you here in Florida, or is it kind of very similar in your growing season what you're growing?
I'm about a half a zone colder. I was gardening in North Florida from 2010 to 2016, and that was the border of zone 9A, 8B. Let's see, something like that. Yeah, 9A, 8B. And I am pretty much zone 8B here, pretty solidly in the 8s. So a little colder more regularly, but it's similar enough that most of the stuff overflows.
Okay.
And it's a weird climate. A lot of the South is kind of weird, as you know, because you're almost growing tropical stuff and you're almost growing temperate stuff. Like you can have a peach in your yard, but you might almost have a starfruit in the yard. Starfruit being totally tropical, a peach being temperate. It's a mild climate, but because it swings back and forth between truly temperate and tropical, you have some unexpected difficulties sometimes. Like 363 days out of the year, you could grow papaya, but those 2 frosts kill all your papaya trees.
Right.
So you have like 363. You get a super productive tropical tree, except for those 2 days. And you have to think about that sort of thing,
Right.
And sometimes you plant something from further north, like peaches or plums or whatever, and you think this is going to do well. At least it's not going to have problems with freezing. But the tree doesn't exactly know when to wake up and go to sleep, so it might bloom in January, and then a late freeze takes it out because it thinks it's warm. It's like, I guess I live in the tropics now. I might as well bloom.
I was going to tell you that what blew me away, and like I said, yes, last year was my first year gardening, and so instead of watching, since I'm a prepper, I'm used to watching preparedness channels. I've been watching them for probably a decade, as far as I can remember. But I just got into gardening, so I've been overloaded with gardening channels, and that's how I found yours and several others. And come to find out, and I don't know if you've ever done this, but someone told me here locally, it's like, hey man, if you have pumpkins, just throw them in the ground. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, just throw them literally in the sand and they'll grow. And I'm like, no way. And all of a sudden I had pumpkins. I was like, this is intense. This is awesome.
Yeah, yeah. You don't necessarily know what's going to grow perfectly in your area from the beginning, but if you could find people like that that say, "Hey, try this," you might never have thought of growing pumpkins. You might have played around with different things like summer squash and the Z word. I don't like to say it because it's gross. You plant those, and people from up in the Midwest, yo, Bo, we have a holiday where we just give away big piles and big boxes of those things every day. You can't leave your windows rolled down in the city because you'll come back and the whole car's full of them. Because people just giving them away. And then they come down to Florida and they plant it and it starts to grow and it looks pretty good. And then something eats the center of it out and the whole plant dies. They're so susceptible to vine borers that you may have a great year the first year, and then the second year you don't get a single one. You have to figure out what's really adapted to your climate first, and base your food plans around that. Because if you're trying to force grow stuff that is not exactly suited to your climate and conditions, you're always going to be fighting. It's much easier to basically garden downhill. You're gardening on the easy setting.
Right.
Like in Florida, sweet potatoes, okra, true yams, the Dioscorea alata. They make those great big roots. I think the photo that I sent you, that's a true yam, that gigantic root. Those things, they call them name yams, and you'll see them for sale at Publix and sometimes at Latin markets and stuff. And it's like it's your equivalent of the potato. The white potatoes don't do always that great in Florida because the fire ants like to kill them, and sometimes it gets too warm, and that it's like you get a few potatoes. It's not like up north, like Idaho, where you get massive amounts of potatoes and it's really no work. Instead, the potato is kind of not quite happy. But these things are on the invasive species list. State of Florida invasive species list. You can grow tens of thousands of calories in the ground just by throwing hunks of roots along your fence line and letting them grow. But people don't really realize that because they're taking assumptions and they're reading seed catalogs and they're getting information from outside of the area. So if you can figure out what grows there without hardly any work, and look first of all for the highest calorie stuff. Start with the high calorie stuff that's actually going to fill you up. That makes a huge difference because you're going to be full. Don't be like, oh, I'm going to prep, so let's see, I'm going to get some lettuce and some jalapenos. You'll starve. I mean, you can't live on lettuce and jalapenos. You better get something that's going to fill your stomach, and it better be easy.
And I agree. I've had nothing but luck with the sweet potatoes. And I think, what did Kaylin just ask me? Something about purple potatoes. And my wife wants to grow those, Kaylin. But most of you folks know I'm in a transition that we just bought an acre and a half, roughly an acre and a half of land. So there's some stuff going to be happening. But exactly backtracking to what you had said, that's the issue I had with my watermelons and the pumpkin was vine borers. They literally obliterated almost everything that I would grow.
Yeah. The pumpkin for the South and for Florida is the Seminole pumpkin, named after the Seminole Indian tribe. That one defeats the vine borers because it roots very aggressively along the vine. So every joint where there's a leaf, it puts a bunch more roots into the ground. Another joint, a bunch more leaves in the ground. It has the additional benefit of being a very, very good storage pumpkin. They can last on the shelf for a year or more. A friend of mine had one for 2 years, and we opened it up, and it was a little dry inside, but you could still eat it. So that's way better than, say, your Halloween pumpkin varieties, Connecticut field pumpkin, that sort of thing. They will grow in Florida. They like the climate, but they tend to get destroyed by the pests. Whereas, so long as the Seminole pumpkin is climbing along the vine borer may hit a piece of it, but the next piece of it just keeps growing. And it'll divide into 2 or 3 plants sometimes because it's gotten wrecked in different spots, but it doesn't matter because each individual bulkhead of plant keeps growing, and they're very, very resistant to the heat and the diseases. But they were basically a survival pumpkin that was hauled around. I mean, the Indians used to just plant them here and there out in the Everglades and elsewhere, and they would just put seeds here and there and let them grow up into the trees and all over the ground. And they would just come back and harvest them now and again, to the point where I've heard reports of wild populations persisting, decades after the Indians were gone. And that's what you want, because you can bet that if if you were planting sweet corn, you're not going to find sweet corn 20 years later. Oh, look at that. Look at it. It's just naturalized. It's like a weed. It's not. It's a touchy little baby. You know, it's not happy.
Yeah, I agreed. We've been doing a lot of experimentation and learning from folks like yourself. There's so much information, but it's also fun. I really truly enjoy gardening in itself. I spend a lot of time out there now, and learning the do's and don'ts. Some people like, hey, use 7-Dust, or hey, use neem oil and stuff like that for the bugs. And
Right.
some things work, some things don't. I like to go as organic as possible, but sometimes I've noticed that sometimes you can't. On certain plants I've run into certain issues where I haven't been able to, where I've had to use like the 7-Dust or whatnot.
Yeah, and it is, and it's often a problem of there's two things that are coming into it, and one of them is variety and one of them is nutrition. It's been shown that plants that have very good soil nutrition, that are getting all that they need, are much less susceptible to pests. Plants actually put out signals like eat me, kill me. I mean, it's like a Nine Inch Nails song, right? I mean, it's basically like come and kill me, because they're weak. So if I have a plant that's already got leaves that are a little bit yellow because it didn't get exactly all of that it needed, it's much more likely to suddenly then have an aphid infestation or stink bug infestation. The plants are already often not quite happy. So that's one part of it. But the other part of it is the genetics of the plants. A lot of our varieties, our heirlooms, our hybrids, etc., they were bred or created for very specific conditions, and many of them, like the heirlooms, are super inbred. And they're inbred, maybe they were a selection from a town in Missouri, and they bred it for this one beautiful set. But then you take that plant, it has very, very limited a genetic slice that is adapted to this particular range above sea level, range of conditions, range of care, type of soil, etc. And then you put it in your garden, and it may or may not like it where you are. So there's a fellow named Joseph Lofthouse. I really enjoyed reading his book. It's called Landrace Gardening. It does better gardening through promiscuous pollination. And so what he does is he'll take it's like a huge amount of different vegetables that's a difficult vegetable to grow in his area. Like watermelons were tough for him. He lives in Utah. Watermelons were really tough for him, so he planted a few hundred watermelon seeds. And only a couple of the plants actually produced watermelons out of all of these ones that he planted, but they cross-pollinated. So he took the seeds from those watermelons that produced, and he planted them the next year, and he planted many more watermelons of different varieties. After a few years, he's got a watermelon that is growing without fertilizing and without hardly any care in Utah, and it's producing watermelons consistently before the frosts, because everyone that doesn't do it dies. Anyways, it doesn't get back into the genetic pool. So what you're doing is taking this huge amount of genetics, throwing it at your yard, and then selecting out the things that actually do well. When I wrote the book, Totally Crazy Easy Florida Gardening, I was in North Florida, and I took different plants from all around the world, and I just basically threw them at my backyard and figured out which ones grew the best with the least amount of care and actually produced for us. And after about 5 years of doing that, I was like, this type of bean, this thing is a monster. It always really produces. People are like, you got to try runner beans. You know, those beautiful scarlet runner beans, you always see them. Oh, that's beautiful. They make a dry bean. It's a good green bean. And I'm like, okay, I'll try them. I try them. They don't like my backyard at all. I planted them multiple times. They hated it. Meanwhile, the Asian long beans, the noodle beans or snake beans, they're like 2 or 3 feet long. Sometimes they call them yard long beans. They absolutely love Florida. It's like Southeast Asia. It's hot. It's steamy. They grow like crazy. I could grow them all the way through the summer and get piles and piles. Totally Crazy Easy Florida Gardening would be the best for all around Florida. I see the question from JT here. Florida survival gardening is for people that want to get serious about food production. It's not just, basically you get the framework of which plants really grow well in Florida from Totally Crazy Easy Florida Gardening. But in 2020, I took that information and then I built on it, like, because people kept saying, how do I turn my yard into food? Okay, I really need food. So I'm like, okay, all right. So this is exactly what I would do in Florida if I knew the supply lines were going to break. So the the theory and the idea of it and the plant framework is there in Totally Crazy Easy Florida Gardening, but Florida Survival Gardening is for much more prepper minded, like let's turn your backyard into a food production factory in Florida. But you throw all these things at the ground and you figure out which ones are actually going to do well for you, and then you hang your garden on that. So I want a good root crop. Okay, let's see. Let's plant turnips and rutabagas, and we'll plant, like last year I planted 4 different varieties of potatoes. 2 of them did pretty well. One of them I really liked, the other one I didn't like that much. The one that actually did much better for me than the others in my climate was the Yukon Gold. And I thought, Yukon Gold, that's like a luxury potato. It's like it's got butter in it already, man. I like the flavor of it. And sometimes you think that's probably not going to be the toughest or scrappiest plant because it tastes too good. But that one did the best. And the other one was a red potato, but I didn't particularly like the potato that much. So out of those 4, this year I predominantly am planting Yukon Gold. So now, okay, I've shifted. I had better yields on Yukon Golds. The whole family liked it. They did excellently last year, so I'll do it again. Now this year, if they aren't that happy, then I might add 3 or 4 other varieties of potatoes in the next year and see if maybe it was a fluke year that they did really well. And I usually will plant a minority amount of stuff that failed the previous year just in case it's a fluke, because sometimes you get plague years with a particular pest, or you get a weird late frost or something. So it's not, you're not really getting enough long-term data to know that that's excellent. But if something just totally blows you away with its production, well, plant that again. Make that part of your plan for the next year garden, and then you at least know, man, I'm going to get tons of that.
Yeah, right on. Because Patrick was asking something about shaded yards here. I know that certain plants do well in shade versus others, depending on the plant and whatnot. So,
yeah, the shade is a difficult problem. I mean, the nice thing about Florida is that even though it's the seed packet will say full sun. In Florida, you really only need about 3 to 4 hours of sun to produce. So, but heavily shaded, I mean, if it's shaded all the time, your options are really limited. To get decent yields of roots, you think of the root as a storage organ. It's made of starches. The starches are created from the solar panels, which are the leaves. Solar panels on the plant. A leaf is the most efficient solar panel that was ever designed. And so these leaves were designed to capture the sunlight, and they take in the carbon dioxide, and then they create sugars. And so they pump those sugars down into the roots, and they store them as carbohydrates or as sugars, and you got the complex carbohydrates to the roots. So if you've got fruit, same thing. They make the sugars, they put the sugars into the fruit. The fruit says, eat me. Don't you want to eat this and spread my seeds all over the place, But if you don't get the sun, trying to create that carbohydrate storage organ or those sweet fruits is a problem. It's you have to have very, very efficient solar accumulation for something that's going to live in full shade. Generally, what you see in full shade is big, leafy, soft crops, and sometimes things with red leaves, or all of these bedding plants, ferns and stuff like that, right? So there's all this stuff that can subsist, but they don't usually make much in the way of food. Now in Florida, you can grow ginger in the shade, but ginger is not going to keep you full. Ginger's nice. If you're all the way down in South Florida, you can grow coffee in the shade, and coffee is a great barter good for the apocalypse, but it does not like cold at all. So if you're going to grow coffee in the ground, the shade will actually help prevent it from frosts overnight. Some citrus will handle being in almost full shade. I have seen oranges fruiting underneath oak trees. They don't tend to produce quite as many fruit, but they will produce. You can grow the true yams, Dioscorea species. That's every time I say yams, people think that I mean sweet potatoes, but yams are the tropical root crop, and it makes a vine that climbs very, very high. So there are multiple varieties of yams: the Name yam that I mentioned, the water yam, the lesser yam, the greater yam. There's all these just different names for yams, but they're basically a vining species that makes a big starchy root. They often grow underneath a canopy, so long as they can reach up into the tree somewhere. If you guide them with a string or a stick or something so they can get up there, they will find where the light is, and they will grow out the top of the canopy and put leaves over the top of the edge of the tree wherever the sun is, and will make roots that way too. But if you can get sunlight, it will make a very big difference, even if that means trying to figure out how to garden on your roof, you know, or borrow somebody's yard in your neighborhood that has some sunlight, because often people will let you borrow a piece of land. They're very happy to have a little garden in their backyard. So try to get sunlight somewhere, because you'll definitely have more production.
And I always tell people, I said, look, because some people are in apartments, and when I'm doing my gardening and whatnot, they're like, man, I just don't have the room. I'm like, you can make room. There's all different types of varieties of gardening. You don't have to have acres and acres and acres of land, especially if you're just like, let's say it's just you or you know, a couple. I've seen people grow on, you know, their little balconies and whatnot, and just, what is it called, the vertical planters and whatnot, and they're growing onions and other different types of food from there. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of awesome. Thank you, Karen Hill, for that super sticker. Truly appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, when you have that sort of a situation, you probably, generally, if I have ground, the first thing that I want to grow are my calories to keep me full. Secondarily, I want nutrition, because if you're just living on carbohydrates or whatever you're getting out of your garden, if you're living on a plant-based diet, you will suffer over time in general, unless you're really, really good at balancing everything. Most people do not really thrive from a backyard garden, unless you can add some eggs or something like that. You will do well for a period of time. The idea is that those high calorie things will get you through the crisis. But if you, say, lived on grain corn for a year or so, you might start having issues with pellagra. You know, you'll get deficiencies. You'll, if you were just eating, people will say, you know, cassava, that's like, it's a big, big crop in Africa. Cassava is super, super important. In Central America, they call it yucca. So if you're living on cassava, it's almost pure carbohydrates, very dense starch, but it has very little nutritional content. So mineral-wise, it's not great, but you can stay full and you can fight off the zombies for a while. You know, usually the thing that is going to be the hardest is getting through it. If you just have nutrition crops, like if you had a great big bed of kale in your backyard, and say the local grocery stores shut down for 2 to 3 months, you're going to be very, very, very hungry. You'll have good nutrition, but you'll be a skeleton and you won't be able to move around much. So primarily, I try to get what is going to fill me up, what is going to make me able to keep going. I can catch up on the nutrition. And most of the time for the nutrition side, you can go foraging for berries and eating wild greens and that sort of stuff to get that balance of nutrition. And any wild meat you can get is excellent, particularly if you can get some of the organ meats and you can get the fat, you know, that sort of stuff, and make bone broth. Bone broth is super, super, super good for you, that sort of thing. But if you're in a situation where you're in an apartment and that's all you can do, I would probably strive to grow as much nutrition as possible and store carbohydrates. I would have the big buckets of beans and grains and that sort of thing. You know, and then I can't eat rabbit food meal after meal. So you store your carbohydrates, and then you grow the highest quality herbs and greens and things like spices and that sort of stuff that is just, you know, luxury stuff that's really good for you, that is going to spice up and make your huge stockpile of grains, you know, palatable.
Speaking of herbs and stuff like that, what I've had growing pretty much year round since I've started gardening is my Cuban oregano, which is very potent stuff. I don't know if you've ever experimented with that or not.
Oh yeah, it's very good. And when one of my sons had some asthma issues, and we make a tea out of it, and that it helps. It opens your lungs up. It makes you feel better. And if you have a cold, my wife would make it real strong, and we would drink it multiple days in a row, and it'll push a cold right out of your system. Down in the Caribbean, they swear by it as a herbal remedy. Just chop it all up. But it's truly tropical. Like the regular oregano grows up to, you know, it's probably zone 5 or 6, because I had it growing just fine outdoors in Tennessee. But this one, once you get past about zone 9, it'll freeze back and die, and it doesn't come back. You know, it's one of those amazing Caribbean herbs in the mint family. Great big fleshy leaves.
Yeah. I've always liked to grow things that I can use for outside of just for cooking, that I can use medicinally, like even like sweet basil and stuff like that. And the sweet basil that I've been growing, I got purple and sweet. It's very robust. After I let it go to seed, some of the seeds got loose and it's just popping up everywhere. It's like just basil everywhere.
And basil is a warm climate plant, so it's probably happy. And what you'll find too is over time, if you have multiple varieties of basil growing in your garden and they're self-seeding, you'll end up with stronger basil plants over time that are suited to your backyard that were probably better than the original ones that you got. They'll start to naturalize, and the genetics are going to sort themselves out. So you just plant as many basils as you can find to begin with, and then just let them hopefully become a weed in your gardens.
Before I go to Duke's question, I was going to ask you, I was in the back of my head because I'm experimenting this year. We've been doing a lot of different experimentation with different types of tomatoes, heirlooms and hybrids. And I'm going to be playing with the Cherry 100s this year. And because they're such a good yielder in regards to that plant. And I don't know if it's something that you, because some people, they have this heirloom and hybrid kind of like fight, you know what I mean? Like, oh, we only grow heirloom and stuff like that. I'm like, well, I'm trying to grow anything that I can that I think works, especially for what I'm paying for the seeds and the yield that I'm getting from these hybrid plants.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with a hybrid. A hybrid is a traditional gardening technique. You're taking a known heirloom line and a known heirloom line, and you're crossing them to get a specific consistent result. So they have two lines, and they know that when they cross it, they're going to get this particular cross. It's going to look pretty much the same every time. And they know that they can do that. And the seeds cost more because they don't just let the plants pollinate themselves. They actually have to cross-pollinate the plants, which is time-consuming. So you cross-pollinate, and you might get 200 seeds in that tomato, but you had to go and pull the bloom apart and carefully transmit pollen from one to the stigma of another. And it's an operation to do that. But we can get very specific results by crossing. There's nothing wrong with hybrids. Hybrid is not GMO. GMO is when they actually splice in DNA from another plant or even an animal or something like that. They're actually taking it and forcing DNA into it for a specific result. It's something that could never happen in nature. Like you couldn't put jellyfish genes into your watermelon, but you can do that in the laboratory by using a gun. They shoot the DNA into the gun, and then we don't know what the results of that sort of stuff is long term. And I generally tend to stay away from that sort of thing because I believe God created everything to reproduce after its own kind, and we shouldn't be crossing the kinds up. Let's just leave them alone. Let's just trust that there was a plan, and we shouldn't really pull the panels off and start yanking the wires out of it. But there's a lot of other people that are just, whether or not, however you see it, it couldn't have happened in a Darwinian context either. These things don't happen. There's no crossbreeding between a sperm whale and a strawberry. It's just not going to happen. So we don't know what the results of that are on us. If we were evolved to eat certain foods, and then you start changing patterns of it, and we don't know how it's going to express, you don't know what diseases, et cetera, may be triggered or what, whatever. But there's a lot of money in it too, and I always distrust things where there's a lot of money involved.
And real quick, so I don't forget, thanks, Farmer Son. Is there a specific type? Because I know there's variations of coffee plants, right? For Florida, for people that want to grow coffee in Florida, is there a specific one that you would suggest, or even where to get it at?
Yes, but I don't know where you can get it. Okay, so there is a variety, and if anybody could tell me where to get it, maybe somebody knows. Okay, they have it. I know they have it in Hawaii as a rootstock. It's called Coffea liberica, Liberian coffee. It is an African coffee that grows at sea. It'll grow at sea level, and it takes much more in the up and down temperature range and abuse than Coffea arabica. Coffea arabica is like, oh man, that's the high end coffee, right? But Coffea arabica really likes a cool tropical climate, like cloud forest type, where it's 60s and 70s and misty all the time and somewhat shaded, and that is not Florida.
Yeah,
So
right.
you can grow it in Florida, but it's not a great producer in Florida. Whereas we had Liberica when I was down in the Caribbean, and it has these great big leaves. The berries are twice the size. The beans are like twice the size. And we roasted it, and it was a fine coffee. But for some reason, the coffee gods have decreed that this one is only good for rootstock, etc. It's very rarely it's very rarely used to make coffee with, except in kind of, probably Africa and the Caribbean, etc. It's just not been discovered. If you were to get Coffea liberica and grow it, I believe that it would grow really well through most of South Florida, but I've not been able to find seeds inside of the US. And the problem with coffee seeds, you can't just buy the beans through the mail and have them mailed to you. They have to be fresh enough to be alive. They can't have been roasted, and they shouldn't have been dried. So you need beans that are fresh harvested and planted within a couple of months of harvest, and so that adds an extra layer of difficulty. I have heard that Pete Canaris at Green Dreams has a lot of stuff, but I have not bought from him before. There is a fellow in North Central Florida that took over a lot of what I was doing with my nursery back when I was in the North Central Florida area, and that is Scrubland Farms with a Z on the end, Farms. And his name is Sam. If you look up Scrubland Farms on Facebook, he has a lot of varieties and a lot of the more interesting stuff that I write about. And I've heard that Pete does the same thing, but I have not seen his nursery. And he has a very deep collection of videos for Florida as well. Pete Canaris from Green Dreams, Florida.
Yeah, I've always looked, because I've been trying to find gardeners in my area, you know what I mean, that I can kind of watch their content and learn from, so I don't make some of the mistakes. I figured maybe I can get ahead of the game and whatnot. And there's a few that I found. There's some smaller channels that have great value to add to what they're doing because they're experienced gardeners and they decided to make a YouTube channel. But I'm trying to think of the person's name, and maybe it is the gentleman you're talking about, because he does a lot of sweet potatoes, and he sells the seeds online. I just don't know if that's the same person or not. But he had some interesting variations of the sweet potatoes.
Yeah, if you can get seedy varieties of sweet potatoes, that allows you to breed out for varieties that fit your area too, which is like kind of a nerdy thing to do. But you can sweet potatoes have a huge amount of variety. You've got ones that are white inside and ones that are white on the outside, ones that are white on the inside and red on the outside. You get ones that are white on the inside and purple on the outside. You get orange ones, you get yellow ones. There's a huge variety of sweet potatoes. And you don't really get to unlock that genetic diversity unless you can get them propagated by seed. Because if you propagate them by slips or by roots, you're just simply cloning the same variety that you already have.
Okay, I got the name wrong. I was trying to type it in because there's a channel that I also watch. I don't know if you ever heard of it, Eat Your Backyard.
Yes, yeah, Eat Your Backyard is good.
Yeah, I like the way he just kind of walks out there and just starts picking stuff. And just like, yeah, this is great.
He's funny.
Yeah. Good content, man. What I was going to ask is, a lot of people have been asking me personally about, storing seeds and stuff like that. And I give them my perspective, but you've been doing it a lot longer. Do you have any suggested ideas in the way people store their seeds for long term?
Yeah. The very best thing to be able to do is to grow your own seeds every year so you can maintain varieties. But there is a lot that goes into that, and it gets to be, you'll get a lot of nerdy like arguments over, do you have enough plants? Do you have enough genetic diversity to maintain this variety? And some things do really well that way and some things don't. And some plants are inbreeders and some plants are outbreeders and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really kind of anarchistic with the way I grow seeds. I like to just plant a whole bunch of different stuff, and then I save from the plants that I really like. And the trick of saving the seeds themselves, the two things that wipe your seeds out are heat and moisture. So if you have a warm, humid area, like you store your seeds on your back porch, that's not a good idea. And you don't want those temperature fluctuations and the humidity going up and down and stuff. The plants are stimulated to germinate by warm temperatures and moisture, but they can't germinate because they're not quite up to the level where they should germinate. So it's basically just chipping at the walls of their germination ability until they just simply can't germinate anymore. If you really want to keep your seeds long-term, take your seed packets or even your bagged seeds or even just loose seeds, stick them in a jar, like a mason jar, but you could use a jelly jar. The point is make sure that it's a jar that has like here's a mason jar. So I'm always drinking water out of these jars. I could drink a quart of water, hydrate. But you get a jar, there's that rubber that goes on the top. So any little jar that's got a rubber seal on it, Smucker's jar, that rubber seal is there to keep the moisture out and to keep the contents safely in. There you go.
There we go.
So you got one like that, or just save your jelly jars or buy mason jars. I like the mason jars. They're not that expensive. But I have the kids save jelly jars too, whatever is convenient. They're those ones that have the stopper in the top and you push it down and you latch to the side. That's the idea. You put your seeds in there, but not only that, if you can get silica gel, take your silica gel packets. You could buy a huge amount of them in a sealed container and, do not eat. It says that on the side in a bunch of Chinese writing usually. Silica gel packet, throw it in there. There you go. That's it. Exactly. Right? So you close it in there and you get that rubber bung sealed and you've got a silica gel packet in there and that will absorb the extra moisture out of it. And then you stick it in your refrigerator. And when you pull it out of your refrigerator, remember that because it's cold, it's going to want to attract moisture and condensation. So if you pull it out of your fridge, if you can leave it sitting for a little while before you start digging through it, let it come up to closer to room temperature, that's better because otherwise the seeds and stuff may cause condensation on them, particularly if you open them outside. You get your big jar of seeds and you open it up, it'll start like getting wet on the inside. You definitely don't want that. You don't want your seed packets to get wet. So you want them to stay cool and you want them to be dry. I don't freeze them, but I do know people that do freeze them. I just don't have that much trust that I got the moisture levels exactly right to be able to put stuff into the freezer long term. And if you were without refrigeration, the best thing you could do is to try to get them as dry as possible and store them in the coolest spot you can find where they're not going to pick up moisture. So that maybe just be your, a back cabinet or something like that where it's not warm. Because if you can eliminate at least one of those two things, the humidity or the temperature, it makes a big difference. And if you have to choose, try to keep them as dry as possible. Just don't put them anywhere warm, hot, and humid, or they're over.
Right. And in Florida, that can be a challenge.
Yeah. I see we have a question on peas. If peas have worms in them, I do not know if there's a way to tell. I generally just split them all open, and then any peas that have worms in them, I throw to the chickens.
Hey, that's a good idea. To feed the chickens as well with that. And I saw someone, and this is what we have done in the past, myself, and then I see someone in chat wrote it, is that a lot of people like to use their food savers and vacuum seal them with a little bit of an O2 absorber inside with the seeds. And I've noticed a lot of people in the prepping community will do that method for their seeds.
You can do that. I just don't like it because it's not resealable. Like I don't find it to be. It's like one more step, right? So I try to keep things at the most dead simple level I can get. I don't want to have to go bust that thing out and plug it in and then do it. And then I'm like, oh shoot, what did I put in this thing again? I should have probably wrote a list on the outside. I got to dig through it and figure out which radish was in the middle that I wanted to plant this spring. So sometimes because I can seal and reseal, I just, for my own, and sometimes I just want to like dig into the seeds and like throw packets in the air and make it rain, and if you have to cut it open, then you've just wasted a bag.
It's what I've noticed also that I've run into doing that with specific types of seeds. Sometimes the vacuum seal will crush the seeds. Some of the seeds are a little bit more sensitive to pressure. I've noticed it'll mess up some of my seeds. So I don't know if anybody else has ran into that issue. But seeds like this.
The prepper community have started grinding their grain with a vacuum sealer bag.
Yeah, right. Like seeds like this, not so much. I don't know if it's going to focus on that, but these are like elderberry, American elderberry seeds here.
Oh yeah.
And ironically, someone gave me a cutting of an elderberry. They mailed it to me. I don't know if she's in here in chat or not, but if she is, thank you. but it's growing well. Right now, I do a lot of container gardening here with the grow bags and whatnot, and it's doing phenomenal. It came in just like a little piece of stalk and put it in the ground, and now it's just bushing out. So I think that's
awesome. Sometimes they do it, and sometimes they don't. I've had elderberry just jump on me, and then sometimes it doesn't want to do it. If it's got a piece of the root at the bottom, it tends to already have a lot of the root buds, and it wants to just run. So she may have taken a piece from the bottom, which makes a big difference.
Yeah, it was like a little root ball and like a stem or something like that.
Yeah, that's it. So it's all ready to go. And plant that in the wettest area of your yard if you put it out, because they like moist conditions. You will see elderberries growing along the drainage ditches as you're heading north through Florida. You'll see them bloom in the spring, and there's just elderberries like for miles.
Thank you, Joni. I knew you were in chat. I just didn't know where.
Joni, you're a good friend to go sending elderberries around.
I was on the hunt because I couldn't find anybody in the area that like the Lowe's and the Home Depots and the places and the nurseries around. No one had elderberry, and I wanted to grow it. So yeah, and you would know for sure. You know, it's like I've been having trouble finding passion flower, the right kind of passion flower. I think it's the blue one. Is it the blue one that has the medicinal? Because there's a blue and a purple.
It depends on if you're looking for the native Passiflora incarnata or if you're looking for Passiflora edulis, which is the one that is generally in the tropics. But both of them have medicinal uses. There's the one from the tropics actually will do pretty well in your area, and they make a better fruit, and they're usually pretty tart, sour on the inside, bright yellow fruit. There's also a purple fruited version of it, and they're perennial. So once they get going, you have them for some years, and they actually respond really well to being pruned back, and they'll grow back for you again. But then there is the native one, which you'll find in the parks and stuff in Florida here and there. If you're lucky, you'll catch it. I had them show up across the street from me. Yeah, Passiflora incarnata is the native passion flower, and Passiflora edulis is the passion fruit of trade, which is in all of your, your passion fruit Kool-Aid or whatever.
Everything passion fruit. Carolyn, I'm in East Central Florida, Zone 9B, if that helps. For sure. Break speaker works too. Struggle. And Fluffy Otter, someone told me that I couldn't grow blueberries in Florida, in my zone, and shockingly, they do well. I haven't had any issues yet.
Yeah, there was a blueberry U-pick in Polk County in the frostproof area, which is a pretty solid Zone 9. Yeah. Zone 9B, I would say. But it's the southern high bush varieties. The rabbit eye varieties do not do well that far south. They like a little more chill hours, but the southern high bush types, you could check the University of Florida. They've always got new selections coming out. But look for a U-pick somewhere in the area, and they're certainly growing one of those southern high bush types. And I had good luck just asking a U-pick guy. I actually interviewed a U-pick guy in North Central Florida and asked him about his favorite varieties, and he just drove me around and we looked at all of his U-pick, and he just told it all. And that's the best way to do it. Who's doing it in your area already? They've got blueberries over there. What are you growing? Are they doing well for you? Or are they a pain in the neck?
And I agree. I've been reaching out to local farmers and whatnot, seeing what they're growing, how they're growing it, what they're using, their soil mixtures. Because when you first start gardening, you're just kind of like going in blind per se. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to give this a shot. And you go to your Home Depot or your Lowe's and you buy your potting soil, your seed mixes and stuff like that, and just roll with it. But I've learned that I'm getting better and better each time I'm going at something.
Yes, definitely. This is the time to be doing it. It's funny how many people started They panic bought my books when the pandemic came. Like people that had never thought about it before. Somebody told me, they said, when the pandemic hit, I just went and I just typed in survival and survival gardening, and I found your book. And they said, because I had that book, like I planted my yard and it worked, and I had a framework and I felt so much better. And it's like, that's really good. I'm really glad that they did that. And it's super encouraging to me. But at the same time, it kind of makes me nervous because, man, you should really be doing a little bit of this already, because food is one of those primary things. It's a little scary, Do mulberries have any medicinal benefits? The if you eat the green ones, they do have a certain amount of soporific effect. It can make you feel kind of drunk, and it may make you vomit. I don't know if there's a use for that, but it's science. I do know that there are some varieties of mulberries that are used for the leaves are actually edible when they're cooked. And Josh Jameson at Hart in Lake Wales has been experimenting with varieties of mulberries, particularly for animal forage, but also secondarily as a human forage if you wanted to eat green things.
Now, something I used last year, and I just wanted your opinion on it because it's very pricey stuff. I'm assuming you're familiar with Fox Farms products.
Not particularly. No,
Really?
I've heard of Fox Farms, but I haven't done anything with their stuff. What is it?
It's they have like different things like tiger. Man, I wonder if I could just show you.
Tiger blood. Wait a minute.
Yeah, tiger blood would be awesome. But I buy it because
rhino horn.
There's
dude, I've been getting these mad gains.
Oh, actually it is Tiger Bloom too. That's funny. Let me see here. I can bring it up on the screen for you to see.
Is that Charlie Sheen that recommended that, or was that?
It has like products like that there.
Oh, yes, Tiger Bloom. I have not used it.
Yeah, and it's not cheap, but I've noticed I've gotten good results out of it. I just wonder because it's all organic, and whatnot. But I'm hoping moving forward, once I get my chickens and whatnot, I could just use that, excrement from chickens.
I'll tell you, one of the downsides of being in Florida is that the soil is not really soil; it's mostly sand. So
right.
If there's nutrition in it, it tends to pass right through.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, if you're using a foliar feed or something like that, like that, I've used Dynagrow, I've used Miracle Grow and Peter's Plant Food, and then generic ones and stuff, just to get a mix of minerals that will keep the plant going, because there's just almost nothing in the soil. And you could put a bunch of compost in there and you'll grow for a few months, and then the plants are like, oh, I need a hit, because they're not really getting the minerals that they need. But that spectrum between is it chemical or is it organic is, I mean, if I can get a pure elemental mixture, it may be, substitute for Ipecac, possibly. This is throwback to mulberries, but there's a couple other things that'll really make you throw up. But if you need the minerals and you go out and you say buy magnesium sulfate, right? Epsom salts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a chemical, magnesium sulfate. But the plants need magnesium and they need sulfur. Put a little Epsom salts around the plants, they green up and they produce better and they produce more nutrient dense food. Now you might say, well, I want to go organic. So you go and you buy composted manure. But the composted manure contains wormers and pesticides and herbicides and maybe hormones and all the remnants of industrial agriculture. Well, if you just put a chemical fertilizer on there, guess what? That's pretty pure from the laboratory. It's just a bunch of elements in a solution. If you were to actually analyze what's in the organic, the organic amendment, it might be worse. So the spectrum of, oh gosh, I want to do it organic. Well, you can do it organic, but if you have anything that's tapping into the industrial farming side of things, there's a lot of people in Florida that have lost their entire gardens because of using manure from a horse farm or a cow farm or something, because they spray these long-term persistent herbicides on the hay fields. So they spray this stuff. It doesn't kill the hay, but it kills all broadleaf weeds. It kills blackberries and pigweed and all the stuff that grows in the pasture. So you get perfect looking hay without any weeds in it. But it's a long-term persistent molecule. This herbicide sticks around. It takes it up into the hay. The animal eats it. The animal makes manure. You take the manure, you compost it. A year later, you put it on your garden, and all of your plants start twisting up like this, except for your corn. Your corn's perfectly fine because it's in the grass family. This plant kills everything but grass. So you grow corn. Your corn looks great. But, oh my gosh, the beans are all twisted. Oh my gosh, the eggplant's all dying. Everything's dying. I had over $1,000 worth of plants get killed back in 2012 because I was doing the organic gardening thing and I got a load of manure from a local dairy. And people don't know still. They're mixing it in The composting operations, you go and buy, I'm going to go buy a few cubic yards of compost. I'll get some mushroom compost, or I'll get some compost from this guy that mixes it. If they had any hay or manure mixed in when they were making that, it could kill your garden. People got a bunch of potting soil in the Gainesville area, this Gainesville Gardening and Preparedness group. Like 40 different people got potting soil from this guy, and this guy happened to have a mix. He had no idea that this compost that was mixed into his potting soil, garden soil mix, contained some of this stuff, but a lot of people got their gardens hit. Wow. Somebody else that I know got a load of rotten hay. Well, you sweep up hay and you compost it. We've traditionally done that for years. Mm-hmm. You sweep up the hay, and she used the hay to mulch around her food forest project. She had all these medicinal Chinese herbs and stuff that she was growing, and they started twisting and getting torn up. It rained a couple of times. The compounds that were in the hay started killing it. So sometimes you look and you go, oh my gosh, man, how do you do anything properly? I mean, ideally, you want the ideal, right? Like, you got the ideal where everything is coming from your own household. You're raising chickens. You maybe you go out and you get a bunch of seaweed from the ocean to remineralize your soil, and then you just cycle it forever. You compost your human waste. You compost your animal waste. You compost all your kitchen scraps, the bones and the meat, everything. Everything gets composted. It goes back through the system. You're growing nutrient-dense food. You're eating it. You're excreting. The excretion goes back. It gets composted in trenches or in a composting toilet or whatever. Everything is like this perfect loop. And you've hit like this super high point. Everything is super organic, and it's exactly how God intended life to work. But to reach that ideal, people have this idea. I'm going to do this ideal. I'm going to do all organic. But often it doesn't hit that ideal, and it doesn't do very well. And they will hold on to a paradigm that is keeping them from being fruitful. Like, you have to have this. You have to remember why you're doing this. You're trying to grow food. Okay, if you use 10-10-10, trash cheap fertilizer, yeah, it's not good for the soil. Yeah, it's not particularly nutritious, etc. But just if you grew broccoli in your backyard with 10-10-10, and your family ate that, it's still probably healthier than the broccoli you got from the grocery store, because it wasn't sprayed with pesticides, and it didn't sit for 5 days before it got eaten. You took care of it, you weeded it, whatever. So that's not great. That's like down here. Now a little better. You're raising chickens, you give it the chicken manure, etc. Man, now you've got some better taste in broccoli, and you've kind of cycled the nutrients through. But maybe your soil is a little short on molybdenum and selenium and manganese and all that stuff that you never think about. So you take that, and then you go and you get something like your Tiger Grow, or you get Dynagrow, or Peter's Plant Food. Oh my gosh, that weird blue stuff. You get something like that, and you water the plants with it. Well, guess what? You've just added those minerals to those plants that they were missing. And because those minerals are in there, the plant can synthesize the enzymes and compounds that you need, the vitamins that you need to eat. So now you've got your organic thing in place, but you've also got that extra edge of having some pure elements, which we have access to at the moment, so we might as well use them. And if you didn't want to do it that way, and you wanted to still kind of stick to organic, you could always go and get something like kelp meal from the ocean. You can go get seaweed from the ocean, or you could go buy a bag of kelp meal and throw that around there. Now you got the 90 minerals of the ocean. But the nutrient density of your food gets better and better and better. And you might find that your aches and pains start to go away, and your teeth get stronger, and your hair looks better. Because even though you're trying to do organic down here, you didn't have the full range of minerals in your food. So it's a very complicated spectrum. And the author, Steve Solomon, helped me a lot with that. If you have not read Steve Solomon wrote Gardening When It Counts. And he's done a lot on nutrient density in food. He wrote a book called The Intelligent Gardener. For those of you guys that want the most nutrient dense food possible out of your backyard, I highly recommend The Intelligent Gardener. It is over most of our heads, parts of it. But a lot of it, just the concept of it, will open your eyes like, oh my goodness, my dental problems were caused because I wasn't eating nutrient dense food. Never even thought about that, It changed my mind on a lot of stuff.
I was finding that link. I'm going to drop it in chat. The Intelligent Gardener.
And The Intelligent Gardener by Steve Solomon and Erica Reinheimer.
And I think, let me make sure I messed that one up.
B. Walker says everything is over my head.
Oh boy. I hear you, B. Walker.
Says, boy, we really messed up God's garden plan. Absolutely. I agree.
All right, there it is. Nice, short, and to the point. So that link there, folks, is to the Hey Lady T, is to the book that he's talking about, The Intelligent Gardener.
Yeah, there. I see it. I see the link just came up in the chat. Duke Man says you don't need rocket science. Compost is the key. Compost is a big part of it. The humus in the soil allows plants to access the nutrients that they need. However, compost is not all of it. If you were to compost everything on your land and make a big, beautiful pile of compost, you take all your hedge trimmings, you take your kitchen waste and everything else. If it's all coming off of your soil, and your soil does not have enough of a particular element in it, by composting, you're not necessarily adding that element to the system. So compost is a big part of it, but it's not the entire picture.
Quite intriguing, to say the least. And folks, we're a little over an hour now. If you guys have any last minute questions, I know it's been over an hour and I don't want to keep David too long.
Oh, we did have 15 minutes of technical difficulty at the beginning, so I don't mind sticking around as long as you want to.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, we could hang out for a little bit longer because I see some of the other questions coming in. Let's see.
Yeah, why don't we run through to, let's see, it's 7:15 Central on my time. We could run through to 7:30 if you want to.
Roger that. So that gives us another about 14 minutes, folks. And you know, I'm going into that situation right now. So I got a couple pallets set up, and I've been building layers and layers for composting myself because I keep on do everything. Because what if, and I know you could possibly agree with me on this, is if you don't have access, if stores aren't around anymore, you can't go buy fertilizer, you can't go buy soil and stuff like that, and you have to be basically 100% dependent on yourself to grow stuff and make your own fertilizers and soil and stuff like that. So I think that's the better way that you can start moving towards that direction would probably be something positive, I guess, right?
Absolutely. I mean, see, I was talking with Steve Solomon about this, and he said, if you can't buy micronutrients to put in the soil, and if you can't import kelp meal and all these little luxuries, right? You can't get your tiger blood, right? So you don't get all that stuff. What do you do? And he says, well, you use the Samoa method. You just throw Samoa on it. He says, basically, you just keep making compost and getting manure and throwing it on there and growing. And Karen says DFSW is Dave's Fetid Swamp Water. That's a type of compost tea I make, which is done for minerals. It's not actually done for the microbes in it, but it is done to rot down a lot of material. What can I grow for asthma? If you can get that Cuban oregano that we talked about earlier, that is helpful. Peppermint, absolutely. My one of my sons, he still deals with asthma. Peppermint, if you can grow peppermint, if you can grow lavender, if you can grow mullein and make mullein tea, that is useful as well. Some of those aromatic herbs are very, very good to just breathe in. And it's also really good if a kid is dealing with asthma, take their shoes off, let them walk around outside barefoot, help in the garden, help with the animals, get your hands dirty. The kids should be dirty, playing with the animals, playing in the mud as much as possible, because asthma and a lot of the other conditions that we deal with and allergies are our body is maladapted to the environment because it's attacking itself rather than attacking what it really should. So the more dirt and getting your hands in the dirt and your feet in the dirt, and the more probiotic stuff that the kid can get. And sometimes you'll find that an elimination diet too will help with a lot of things. Dairy, modern dairy, like not raw milk, the regular pasteurized homogenized milk that we drink. A lot of kids have a problem with that. Wheat in particular, and sometimes potatoes. Potatoes have solanine in them. If you're dealing with joint pain and that sort of thing, stop eating potatoes and stop eating wheat. And you often in a few weeks your joint pain will just go away. And sometimes with asthma, it's something that you're eating and dealing with. Your body is just like, oh, I can't deal with it. B Walker says, please explain, David, did you just say if you're composting only from your property and the element is missing, it won't miraculously make it after compost? Did I understand that right? Yes, that's right. There's two main streams of thought on this. One of them is the Elaine Ingram school. You'll see, soil, how to build your soil, and like basically by not tilling and building up the most mineral and fungi, basically, but microbial and fungi content possibly, it will actually allow the plants to get everything they need. There's no such thing as a bad soil. There's just not enough life in it. So we just put plenty of compost in there, don't till, put lots of organic matter, and then the fungi and the bacteria will figure everything out. Then on the other side of it, there are the commercial farmer types that are like, well, the soil is pretty much a dead medium. It's basically you just burn it down to its elements, and you measure all the elements, and you say, we're missing this much sulfur per acre, this much calcium per acre, this much this per acre, and we put that on there, the plants grow big and green. And they do, but it's missing part of it. And I think on the other side, the idea that you can basically have anything come out of the ground. I had an argument with Jack Spurko over this, and he was not happy with me. He probably doesn't even remember. It was like 10 years ago. But he was talking about how, in a food forest system, you can get all the minerals you need from the ground, and that the chickens will just pick up all the minerals they need. And I said, I don't believe that that's necessarily true, because if the minerals are missing from the geology of your area, where are they going to come from? Do we believe? It's possible, but do we believe in alchemy? That you can have an element that is next door to another element. Like some people believe this. It's possible. Potassium could become magnesium in certain situations, or calcium in certain, you could, maybe something could change in some way biologically that we don't understand. But generally, people don't believe that and haven't really observed it much. There are some experiments that show that may be possible, but people have been trying to make gold out of lead for a long time too. So I think somewhere in the middle, there is a good handshake. Take care of the soil, take care of the soil life and the fungi, get them the minerals as well. Don't kill off the soil fungi by just throwing chemicals and all this junk all over it. But at the same time, if your plant looks like it's a little hungry, don't feel bad about throwing a little Epsom salts around it to green it up. Or if it comes down to a choice between do I grow food or do I maintain this exact, combination with nature, etc., just use what you have, go. Yeah, exposure for the immune system is absolutely super important because it trains your body what to fight.
No,
idle hands at the devil's workshop, So your body needs to fight something, and it'll fight itself if you're not in the dark.
Oh boy. Let me see here. Before I was going to ask you something. I did a video a while back in regards to coffee grounds and gardening and whatnot, and it was like a 50-50 split. Some people say, "Oh, you should never add coffee to your plants," and then other people, and I was like, "Well, I did some research and I gave them the reference material that I used." I was wondering your take on it. I know some people use coffee grounds in their compost, but from my understanding, certain coffee grounds, and they have to be done a certain way. I think Duke, one of my guys in my chat, who's a proficient gardener, said that you have to double brew it to get some of the stuff out of it or something like that. I
never pay any attention to that. I just throw coffee grounds all over the ground and let nature take what it wants. There was a friend of mine used to run a little espresso shop. And so they would save me this trash can full of grounds every week. I would go and pick it up and I would just throw it everywhere. And I would use it for the green in my compost pile. I would mulch on top of the ground with it. One thing is, if you throw stuff on top of the ground and it rots down, nature will pull it down into the ground. The worms will pull it down and eat it and that sort of thing. If you were to just put your plants right into the coffee ground, that may be way too much. They may not be happy with it. They might not like the acidity or how much nitrogen's there. Or maybe they don't like coffee. Maybe they're more like tea drinkers, right? So the plant might not like that. But if you throw stuff on top of the ground and you just let it rot down, nature can recycle any organic matter down into the ground. If you take, roadkill and you tried to plant a tomato into the middle of roadkill, it would kill the tomato. But if you buried the roadkill and you planted a tomato near it, the tomato roots would find it when it wanted it. If something died on the ground and it left their bones and everything rotting into the ground, that area is going to be really, really rich. A Fish Loves Life says, David the Good, should I use green sand around my fruit trees? Green sand is a decent source of some micronutrients, but it's kind of a slow release. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. See if it makes a difference. Put some green sand around one of your fruit trees and don't put it around another one. And then at the end of the year, you should have an idea if it helped.
Yes, Sheila, he has a phenomenal channel. And this is, like I said, I've been telling you guys, I've been watching gardening channels, and folks like himself, there's just so much, a wealth of information. Like I said, this is just like the tipping point of what you're hearing today on this live stream. And Duke, my apologies. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you out there like that, Duke. I know someone had that conversation with me, but I do apologize. Why am I wrong? What is? Let me see what B Walker has here. Why are my worms crawling out of my ground and die on my concrete?
They often do that because the ground floods and they have to get out of it. Also, if there is the sound of drumming, they think that it's rain. So if there is a vibration taking place somewhere, they may come out of the ground. But often that's just a matter of it's gotten too wet. They come out of the ground so they can breathe, because they breathe through their skin, and they get crawling around, and then they realize that they're in the wrong spot, but it's too late and they die in the sun, because let's face it, they're not very smart.
I agree. And Redneck Prepper, if you guys missed David's link to his channel, it's also down in my description. If you don't catch it here on the live stream, it's down in the description. I was going to say, I have the wife has a little worm thing going on. She layered 2 of the Walmart plastic bins and poked holes in it and did all this whole thing. I don't know where she got the idea from, but she'll throw like some fruits and stuff in there, or banana. She just throws things in there and they just devour it. You know what I mean? And she kind of
so much fun.
Yeah. So at first I thought she was insane, but you know what I mean? She was like, no, I know what I'm doing. Just relax.
Right. I saw it on Pinterest. You got to get her off of Pinterest. That's the thing. I had to tell her, no more Pinterest for you.
Oh boy. But I remember checking on it a few months back, and I was like, they're probably dead. And I'm like, nope, they're just cruising along, just living their lives, you know?
Yeah, and the tea that comes out of the bottom of it is a great fertilizer. You just dilute all that worm leachate and throw it on stuff. It's full of good stuff. Blame YouTube for the idea.
That's the majority of things.
Yeah.
What you got here, Maverick? What are you saying? Worm grunting. It makes the worms think there's a mole nearby.
Wow. Can you you probably do the call and get them to come out? So.
What is this here? Afraid of steaming worms here. Roger that.
Yep.
I think that's all I see. I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody here, because I know some people were the chat. I didn't want the chat to be too slow, folks, so I didn't put it on super slow this evening, but just enough so I can try to keep things going on. Eat local, in other words. Yeah, I mean, sounds great, Christopher.
It's possible, Christopher. You know, we live in such a complicated system, and the amount of knowledge that any one of us has, if you had all knowledge, the amount of knowledge we have is so tiny. We have such a tiny little pinprick of knowledge, and each one of us has our own set of experience too. There is absolute truth on whether or not we get the elements that we need from what we eat, or whether your yard has the right amount of elements, or whether it is possible for fungi to pull everything that a plant ever needed out of the ground, and if you just ate these certain things, you'd be fine. I don't know for sure, but if you pay attention to how you feel and how your plants look, I learned a lot by radically experimenting with my diet over the years, and in growing different plants and trying different amendments. A couple of years ago, we had 12 beds, and we put a different amendment in each bed, and then we tracked the progress over the course into the spring. We planned it was a fall garden. We tracked it into the spring, and then we did taste tests, and we found out what worked and what didn't. And that'll teach you a lot. And I won't say that you absolutely have to go and mineralize your soil for sure. Your soil may have what you need. And You know, maybe some people don't even need any selenium. I mean, there's this one guy that's a full carnivore, Mark Baker or Sean Baker, Dr. Sean Baker, right? And he's eating like nothing but carnivore for 2 or 3 years. The guy's like ripped and healthy, and and people are saying you can't do that. That's impossible. Well, he tried it. A lot of people just read something and they don't try it. Don't trust the science. Science is happening every single day. Your backyard is a laboratory. Your body is a laboratory. If you eat something and you feel like garbage, stop it. You know, we can learn. We can learn a lot from. Don't trust experts. The experts, remember, they only know a tiny, tiny amount too. I only know a tiny, tiny amount. If you can use my experience to build your own experience on top of it, that's awesome. My work is done. But you know, we don't know for sure. B Walker says growing direct from produce advice. Yeah, there's a lot of roots that you can grow right from the grocery store, but it's kind of a broad question. I use dried seeds, beans and peas and lentils and stuff like that from the grocery store for cover crops because it's actually cheaper to just go buy a couple of bags of beans and throw them over a bed, let them grow to a certain size, cut them down, turn them into compost, till them under, harvest them, doesn't matter. I kept green on the ground. I kept the root exudates going. I kept life in the soil. I added a little nitrogen, and it cost me $1.50 of Goya beans across the bed. It's a really cheap way to do it. A lot of roots you can get, like I've planted grocery store potatoes, no problem. Sweet potatoes, I'll put sweet potatoes in pots. When they grow vines out, break the vines off, plant those, and make sweet potato beds from sweet potatoes I got from the store. You can go and get green onions and plant them in your ground. They'll grow into groups of green onions over time. If your climate is mild enough, the green onions will just naturalize in a corner of your yard, and you can pull all the green onions you want. There's a lot of options. You can go down the spice aisle, and you can go and get little seeds for different herbs and things, and plant them. It works well. There's plenty you can get for the grocery store. If everything collapsed and the seeds were gone, and you could still hit a grocery store and get some dried beans or something, plant them. I actually write about that in Grow or Die. Like, here's the book. You don't see it. Crazy, insane graphic design. The last chapter of it is talking about, like, what do you do when you can't get any seeds? Where would you find them? Well, you go dumpster diving. I mean, you probably could go through your pantry and your neighbor's pantry and get enough seeds to plant a garden. Go get those potatoes with eyes on them. You're going to start breeding out your own potatoes. You're going to do like the guy did in The Martian and dig up the dirt and plant the Thanksgiving potatoes, you know?
That's awesome. I was trying to keep up with chat, sitting here like going back and forth. And Kaylin, I don't know what your question was. I tried going back and I could not find it. I don't know if it was inappropriate or not, so I do apologize. And thank you, Harvey, for that. All right, folks. We've had truly a extremely informative live stream. And if you're not subscribed to David's channel, you need to go check it out. I mean, just imagine that, like I said, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And I think what I agree with David is, like I said, we can't be what is it called, the Ikes. We can't be I know it all or I know everything kind of folks. So that's why I love bringing guests on the channel, because come to gardening, I know just a little bit. I'm just learning myself. Maybe I excel better at prepping. Like I'm learning from you guys how to can stuff. I'm starting my canning journey this year. I don't know if you do pressure canning, David, or not, but it should be interesting.
Yeah. And when you first do it, you think it's like boiling a rattlesnake. It's going to kill you. You know, pressure canning's scary. Once you learn it, it's no big deal.
But all in all, I first, thank you guys for being here tonight. Truly appreciate that. And Mod, you guys have done a phenomenal job. And like I said, there's a lot of information here. If you caught us, somewhere in between, you might want to start off. You might have to skip over about a couple of minutes where we had some technical difficulties, but that's a live stream, man. That is a live stream. And David, I want to say truly, truly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy life, man. I know you're a content creator, you're gardening, you got all kinds of stuff, family and stuff like that. So I truly appreciate you taking the time to come join us as well on the channel.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. It's nice. I started out actually as a writer. When I first started writing, I did a lot of articles on prepping, and I used to give regular talks at prepping events. And this is my roots. I wanted to have food in the ground for my family, so I appreciate what you're doing. And I'll definitely be talking to you in the future. Happy to be on anytime.
Oh, I truly appreciate that, guys. So other than that, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Like again, David, if you want to hang tight real quick while I wrap it up, and bounce back to you real quick. But again, thank you all. I want to say good night. God bless. Stay safe out there, and I will see you guys on the rebound. All right, folks.